but he's still spending $80,000 a month on his lifestyle. And, what was very interesting, he's like, I do wonder what it's going to happen when most of us like real estate guys going around all of a sudden start going bankrupt because things happen that we don't expect. He's like, but the one thing that I do have going for myself is I have my personal brand. He's like, and I am very confident that if I needed to make $1 million in a weekend, I could do it. What is going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. I am Mike DeHaan, and I'm here with my co-host, Dan Austin. Hey, and this is the Wednesday Mike and Dan show where we talk about real estate investing, business, and whatever else we feel like for the week. So thanks for joining us today, and we're going to dive into a whole bunch of things because I know Dan is very passionate about a couple of topics that we have today.
Oh, should we dive into the Oprah conspiracy first or some real news?
The Oprah conspiracy. But for real, so I don't know if you guys have heard this whole thing, but there was this massive fire in Maui, which I'm sure everyone heard about that, especially because a lot of people who are in real estate have probably been here to Lahaina. It's somewhere that's very near and dear to my heart. I've been there probably 25 times in my life. Just that was kind of where I went for vacation.
You're affluent.
I'm affluent. Dude, I remember going there like before it was crazy expensive. And like it was still like Hawaii, but it wasn't like the crazy resort.
It was more chill, like less developed, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I can see that.
But, there was this whole situation where everything sort of aligned and there was this massive fire that burned the entire town of Lahaina to the ground. This place
started.
Yeah, this place, thousands of people. It's caused billions of dollars worth of damage. It's killed, I think, pushing 100 people now. Like it's an insane situation.
Last I saw.
Yeah, but now and as a result of this, there's all these conspiracy theories that are out going around, and I'll loop this around. This is a real estate specific topic because a lot of people think that the value of their real estate was why Oprah, of all people, chose to burn down the great town of Lahaina. And I don't even actually know like why people think this, like outside of that.
They're connected it to, apparently there was another fire near one of her other compounds because Oprah's been buying land up, which wouldn't you, if you were Oprah and you're like, well, I can't really go in public without people freaking hounding me and having like cameras at me. So she would probably, like many famous people, buy hundreds and hundreds of acres around her compound to have privacy because that's how you get privacy. And then she had another compound. There was a fire near it, and it didn't burn down. And her one in Maui didn't burn down either. Or it could just quite possibly be a coincidence that she lives in places that could catch on fire and that her place didn't catch on fire. And then more so, could you just leave it alone? Like, do we have to have a bad story about somebody that actually is not even in the limelight anymore?
Well, the thing that's so weird about all this sort of stuff is every time that there's something terrible that happens, there's always conspiracies about it. And in my mind, it's kind of a way that people cope with stuff. Like they refuse to acknowledge that something like that could happen to them, or like
naturally.
Like the crazy shit does happen, so they have to like think that something's intentional. Yeah. But here's the unpopular truth about this: everyone is saying that these people lit the stuff on fire so that they could like develop the land and like do all this sort of stuff instead of having it be a town. But, especially if it's like a high profile person, the unpopular opinion is, Lahaina is beautiful. It's great. But like, it's just another island. Like there's shit tons of islands everywhere.
There's a lot of them.
Like for some billionaire to go and like destroy this whole area so that they could just buy more land, that doesn't make any sense. Like they can do that tons of places around the world and not have to like go through this whole process. So why the hell would they do that? People are just dumb. I mean, the thing that always worries me about stuff like that is people's affinity towards wanting to have some sort of conflict towards things that shouldn't really like have a conflict. Right? Like we should just all acknowledge like, oh damn, that situation's fucked. Like that's really bad. Right. But instead people try to turn it into this point of contention. And by people, I mean the Chinese and Russian governments putting AI people out there to start up these conversations.
Then the ignorance in our American human mind is like, oh man, and then it gets shared on social media and then people believe it. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if it's true or not because the damage is already done, and that's why psychological warfare works so well.
Yeah, I mean it does, and that's something that they've been doing since the Cold War. But all this to say though, there has been this big uptick with real estate investors and developers now heavily marketing to this area because all these houses have burned down trying to buy land. And like, honestly, if you're one of those people, shame on you. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, honestly,
there's a 30-day grace period.
Well, like, at least give it time to get back on its feet. I mean, you're not completely wrong, right? Because when there's an action plan in place, things start to move. There will be people that want to exit from that situation.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's just like going to a place where there's a hurricane or a tornado and it destroys like a whole town. Yep. You go there and like, if that is your business acquisition strategy, you are what we call a scumbag. You know, you are literally, you know, doing predatory practices at that point on things that are completely out of people's control. And I think you can make yourself available, but like there have been a lot of complaints about these hard sales tactics that people are coming in with to try and like buy this land to, you know, put whatever on it at that point.
That's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
However, like on that same topic, when you talk about that, because that is like a lead source, right? Like homes that burn down.
Mm-hmm.
So outside of Lahaina, like regardless of that situation, hypothetically, the reason why these people want to go there is that somebody's house could burn down. They could get an insurance check, which would take a while, and then they could sell you the land and take the insurance check and not rebuild.
Yeah. I mean,
correct.
Yeah,
right?
that's a common thing that we see all the time. Yeah,
right. That's like a typical, like you can find like those types of leads where like a house is caught on fire, and sometimes it's partially needs to be real, but other times it's you're just buying the land, and that's why they'd be incentivized to sell because they want to collect the insurance money, and like you said, maybe just exit from that situation entirely. Maybe this was their like moment where they're like, you know what, I need to get off the island. This is this I've been getting stir crazy here. I'm ready to leave. Now that I had to jump in the ocean because my world was on fire.
Yeah, no shit, right? I mean, it could be. I don't know. Either way, I think the key thing is to be selective about your opportunities that you pursue, especially when they are things that are like world-changing, that are completely out of somebody's control. You need to show a little bit of sensitivity to that. I mean, we market the people that have distresses, but a lot of it's self-inflicted, right? It's people that have like bankruptcies and those sort of things. Like they made bad decisions. It's a little bit different than they were kind of just hanging out and then all of a sudden over the course of 30 minutes, like everything that they knew lit on fire. Right.
Yeah.
So
and I think too that just the whole conversation around how we do market to distressed sellers, because these people are distressed, just like a person in bankruptcy. Maybe they're going bankrupt because of medical bills. Who knows? But showing up with that value first mindset of like, hey, I'm going to serve this person. Usually, the bigger the problems you solve, the bigger payout. So showing up as a problem solving, you know, with the problem solving like mindset, and also like having some ethics and being open and honest, because it's too easy. We actually talked about this earlier today. It's like too easy. The barrier to entry is too low that there are scumbags that get into the industry just like any industry. And so with that barrier being low, it's too tempting to make ethical and moral decisions based on a set of common values that most of us follow. And so people do dirtbag things. You just don't have to be that person. And I would like to think if you're listening to our podcast, you're not that kind of person.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that you can do if you do want to help out the island is to book trips there or like plan to go there, which is contrary to what a lot of people are doing. A lot of people are backing out and that sort of stuff, thinking that they need time, which they do like in the short term. But I also can guarantee you that there are a ton of people whose entire livelihood depends on your tourism. And what happens in every part of the world when there is some kind of disaster and all of a sudden everyone stops coming, all the businesses shut, all the people are unable to pay their bills. So if you really want to support it, you know, keep your vacation plans, plan to, you know, go there next year or like in the winter time or whatever, and just expect that it's going to be a little bit different than you were thinking it was going to be. It might be a little bit better. It'll definitely be quieter than it was. And go there and be prepared to spend your hard-earned money, because that's honestly what these people need at this point. You know, and for some reason that always gets overlooked when there's stuff like this happens. I don't know why.
Totally. But you know who doesn't need our hard-earned money? Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports.
What a segue.
Segue into business. This is the business part of the podcast, because Mike and I do enjoy entrepreneurship outside of real estate. This is very real estate specific, but we're entrepreneurs at heart and we love business. I've been following Dave for several years now, probably since, I don't know, like 2017.
So
Barstool
give like a too long didn't read of like his whole arch.
So he's been around for, I can't remember when they started, but it started out as a newspaper, Barstool Sports. And it was almost the reason why I started following it when they got on a big online presence was it's more satirical, but it's also like legit, real like sports media. And then there's just a bunch of funny stuff around it. And as he built this, basically making no money as a newspaper, got on, and then he went online with it. And he's a young guy. He's probably in his mid 40s now, younger, I should say. And once they got online, really was able to curate an audience, and his personality is like super just verbose and out there. It's kind of like he is kind of a lot like us, like no bullshit, like doesn't pull any punches, says how he sees it, which of course people love that. And then he's just a genius marketeer. So basically all of his like key employees that he's hired into his business are all online personalities. He's spun off huge podcasts, like Call Her Daddy's a big one that's like everybody knows about that podcast because like they started there and Alex has gone on to do her thing or whatever. But lots of different characters who have built online presence and then since left or stayed with the company, and he really built his company in the limelight. And he also is the guy, if you most people know him from the pizza reviews where he goes around like New York City trying all pizzas, and he does it other places too, but they're based in New York City. He's a New Yorker.
You're literally describing so many things I've never heard of before. Like
really?
Any of this.
Okay, so I'm glad you haven't heard this. So like maybe this is a person that I follow that a lot of people don't. Yeah. But anyhow, he's built this media empire. Just genius. Just good business practices. And is it, like I said, a marketeer, understood how to build a brand in the a big brand in social media world, right? TikTok and Instagram, all that sort of stuff. So he is also like, I got fuck you money, and always make sure people understand that he has fuck you money by doing stuff that is just funny, I think. Mm-hmm. And so he sold this company to Penn Capital for $500 million. It was done in a couple different transactions. Like this is a couple years ago, like they dipped their toe in, bought a share, and he's like, hell yeah, I'm rich. And then he ended up selling basically the company to them. So it's in a private equity transaction. And so then fast forward probably 12, 24 months of them fully owning it, and it hasn't performed what they want it to. So they're basically saying it's like an $850 million loss, because anytime you go from, and you know this, like the CEO, the owner, founder, CEO running the company, and then it gets sold and rolled up into a bigger company, they just can't be as nimble. They can't be as good. Tons of bloat. People kind of start falling off, and it could have been a poor timing thing too. Maybe Barstool was ready to do that. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, long story short, they now have a deal with basically Disney's holding companies, and Disney's like, yeah, we can't be associated with Barstool, so you guys need to drop it if you want to partner with you, if you want to come together on this. And so they basically called up Dave, and they're like, hey, I know we paid you $500 million for Barstool. We'll sell back to you for $1.
Why like $1? Why not like $1 million?
I'm sure there has to do something with like the shareholders, and just like you can't give it away for free, but then also don't just don't negotiate it. We're just basically trying to give it to you. We don't want any sewage or sewage. We don't want any lawsuits, anybody suing us, anything like that. Like, let's just make it as clean of a transaction as possible. I have no idea why. But I'm like, that is incredible.
Like, do you think they went through escrow?
I'm sure it's not even done yet. Like, I'm sure it happened probably months ago, and they're finalizing it, and that's why it's coming public now. But I just thought, like, wow, that's an amazing situation to come back into after getting paid like $500 million. And the funny thing is too, he like moved to Florida part-time, or like 51% of the time, to save on taxes, because he's like, I'm super rich now. Yeah. And so like got all that money, and now he's just back in the game for basically free. And then he said now he will never sell it again, because why does he need to? He got a $500 million exit, which he'll be a billionaire by the time he's probably in his 60s, to be honest, if he just barely invested his money. And now he owns the company.
So now he's like back. Yeah, that is crazy. It's an easy way to
yeah. He's not the CEO, and he probably won't remain the CEO, because he has they call it the token CEO, which is a woman. Mm-hmm. That's her Instagram handle, tokens.
Oh, really?
Who's a woman, but she's like legit. Like, it's not like bullshit. But like, so he'll just be basically the single shareholder, which I think is absolutely incredible.
So he'll be completely privately owned then too. Yeah, that's interesting.
It'll be him. It's just him. He'll be the owner.
I wonder where that falls on size of like 100% privately owned companies, because that must be up there.
Well, again, what the actual value is if they overpaid for it, but it's definitely up there. But he's not. I mean, there's billion-dollar corporations that are just privately owned. You know what I mean?
Are they that are owned by like a single person?
Oh, by a single person? Golly, yeah, I don't know.
So you know what the largest company that was owned by a single person was for many years?
I do know this. No, I can't.
You're not going to think of it because it's kind of weird. CrossFit. CrossFit was the largest company that was owned by a single individual for like 4 or 5 years, which is just so random. And it's because, Greg Glassman, he owned all of it and had no shareholders, no like 50% partner or anything. And so there's like these, but that was worth, I'll say it's like, I don't think it pushed $1 billion, but it was a few $100 million for sure. But I don't know. I'm curious, actually. I'm going to look. Largest company owned by a single person, because that has to be up there, I feel like. No shit. Well, according to Reddit from a post in 2023, so a very credible source, they actually say the current one is Dyson. Dyson Vacuums, owned 100% by James Dyson, with an estimated worth of $3 billion.
Damn.
So who knows? It's on Reddit, so maybe it's true. Maybe it's completely bullshit. You can fact check me on that.
Yeah, who knows?
We're gonna get back to it. So that's crazy though to think about, and like think about how much of a pain in the ass it is to run our like seven figure-ish company. I think about that. That's 1,000x.
Well, one of the things with Barstool, just because they have they're really profitable, but they're not that large of a company as far as employees. And I'm sure it'll slim down and they'll focus more on what their core business is. But like they got into online gambling and all sorts of stuff, sports betting, stuff like that. So they're very super profitable because of a lot of those things, because they have a cult. Anytime you have a cult following, right? Like that's where you make money. And and I guess to bring this full circle, we're in the era of where influencers are the ones that are making money, because people, you build a social media following where people can know, like, and trust you. They get a portal into your life, and then they'll buy products from you. And so from a real estate standpoint, from your business standpoint, having a presence similar to that, as well as like in your local community where people know, like, and trust you, that's where you're going to give value. Well, the difference is social media allows you to take what you could do locally before, where you're that go-to real estate guy or that go-to business, and they let you take that internationally, worldwide.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's such an incredible thing to be said though about like having that personal brand with that and how much value that brings. I mean, that's Alex Hormozy's whole thing, right? About why he started that is he was seeing people like Conor McGregor who had no business being in the whiskey space, and all of a sudden they start a whiskey business and it's worth like $600 million, right? Or like he's talked about like the different people that sort of inspired him along the way. Even looking at smaller scale, like Brandon Turner, you see that he was on like Ryan Pineda's show, it was a couple weeks ago. And, he was like, they get all into his like his spending all this money and all this sort of stuff. And he's like, I have pretty much no income right now just because we've paused most of our acquisitions and, a lot of our stuff is in transit. Yeah. He's like, but he's still spending $80,000 a month on his lifestyle. And, what was very interesting, he's like, I do wonder what's going to happen when most of us like real estate guys going around all of a sudden start going bankrupt because things happen that we don't expect. He's like, but the one thing that I do have going for myself is I have my personal brand. He's like, and I am very confident that if I needed to make $1 million in a weekend, I could do it.
Right. Because
of his personal brand. He's like, I was like, all I would need to do is have some sort of launch or some sort of business idea. He's like, and I could make $1 million in 3 days, guaranteed. Right. And that is only because he has such an incredible following. Right.
Right.
So, like I would say, if anything, that is probably the newest gold rush is like followers. Right. And like audience, and like, but doing so in a way that it's not so transactional or that you're not going to like lose favor, because people that have longevity with that is where the real value starts to come in. Like you looking at some of the names that have been around for a long time, like Tony Robbins, right? Like he's kind of like the original guy that did that. Look at how successful he is, and people still go to his stuff.
They pay him. There's people that pay him up to $1 million to be in proximity.
I know. Yeah. Like just for being in like his cool kids club.
That's wild.
Whatever even that entails,
Yeah. I think you're right. Definitely. So I think it used to be users was like the most recent gold rush when you talk about like why would Facebook pay hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for WhatsApp, which is not something you can monetize. Well, it's because they brought in users into their platform, right? All these different things. People are looking at users from a corporate and enterprise standpoint. Now, an individual sole proprietor can get not users, but followers and monetize that on an equivalent scale, if not massive scale, when you think about what an individual is compared to like a massive corporation of shareholders like Facebook, on an individual level with how low your overhead could be as a sole proprietor, now that you have, say, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million, 100 million followers.
Yeah, well, you have like influence, right? So you can do pretty much whatever you want once you have that. I mean, even if you're someone that's trying to do like large business stuff compared to like other people, right? Elon Musk is a perfect example of that because he has that following, he has influence. He can go and start whatever business he wants. Right. And even though 70% of the people out there will hate him for it, he's still going to have an incredible number of people that buy into that product because he's the one that launched it. Versus you go to like the person that's number 8 on the billionaire list, I don't even know who that is, but no one cares about that person. So they can go and launch the next thing and they're going to have to go through the slow launch just like everyone else. Yeah. Like even with resources, like having that name and that attention from the public is so unbelievably valuable right now.
I would be curious how much money Elon made overnight. Yeah, you can't see it now, but my the burnt hair back here that we talked about, when I think I paid like $60 for that, and he probably sold like, I don't know, 10,000 bottles or 100,000 bottles, and it probably cost him nothing. Yeah, and he just, because of his influence, people will buy it.
Yeah, I mean that's what they do. So, no, it's interesting. I mean that's why I think it's a really important thing to take into consideration as you know, and that works on like a large level, that also works on a local level. If you can go and you can be that person that has that name and you're like your local real estate community, that's the easiest way to become the person that has a lot of deals coming their way or finds a lot of deals. I mean, even looking like locally in our market here, one of the guys that has like the most, I would say like renowned names because they've been doing it for a while and they've really made a point of putting their names out there locally. They're not even that good of investors, but everyone sort of like perceives them that way. And so they've built a whole business around doing these like JV deals and this other stuff just because people bring them opportunity because they're the first person that they think of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just putting yourself out there as a real estate investor and sharing the deals you're doing, even if it's where you don't feel like you're doing a lot. First of all, you're doing a lot more. If you're doing stuff, you're doing a lot more than 99.9% of people that call themselves real estate investors, right? So you're past step 1, which is call yourself a real estate investor. You're at step 2, you're doing a deal. But sharing that information and sharing what you're doing, people will just ask questions. Especially, it's like random. Like, I mean, you and I get it. I got to, we're talking to people about like novation agreements. Like, we're not experts by that by any means. We had Eric Brewer on our podcast. We've talked about it's a tool in our quiver, but people hear that and they're like, I want to know about that. Or they hear, just a deal that you're doing and they want to get involved because now you've put it out there and now you have a connection with somebody that can bring you opportunity and vice versa, like a valuable interaction there. That's genuine. It's not just value, right? It's just a genuine interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny though. It is one of those things that I would say is kind of tricky because like, how do you stand out? Because a lot of people know what we're talking about. And this is where it gets so tricky. So you try to outsource it because you're not a creator yourself, try to get on staff, or you try to hire these services. But all of a sudden, and we all see this, and we even are guilty of this ourselves, everyone's shit looks the same. And after a while, it's like an echo chamber where it's like everyone's like, oh, you're doing the content thing too, high five. And then it's like, where are the actual consumers of all of this?
Yeah. It's definitely an echo chamber sometimes, right? Because then you're all following the same people and it's out the same yellow highlighted words and stuff. I do think, and I'm still trying to figure this out myself, but like, I think that there's a way. I'm looking at this through a lens of like, how do you create genuine relationships with people starting from your local market? Because if you go to a RIA and you meet people, you introduce yourself, say there are people you know and don't know, and they happen to follow you on Instagram after you kind of give your Instagram handle or whatever. So now you have followers in your local market. Maybe you have 100 people in your local market that are part of the RIA or RIAs, and they're following you and they're seeing, oh, I'm posting about my new flip, all that sort of stuff. I think that, showing those existing followers like some life, the day-to-day stuff and the day-to-day transactions you're doing through, like utilizing your stories and not just like posts, because people generally will see that and that's, looked at as kind of more for your followers, right? And so I feel like a lot of times my interaction with other people, especially locally, is through my stories. They comment or they whatever that. And like, for example, I'm having a lunch with a guy I haven't talked to probably 20 20 years.
Oh shit.
Maybe a little, yeah, probably about 20 years. I grew up with, and he's in real estate here locally. I'm in real estate here local. We just haven't connected. We both moved on, and just from Instagram, like, hey, let's grab lunch, talk real estate.
Yeah,
great. Sparked a conversation with somebody. So I think that just in that small dose of sharing something in my story or being available for people to see and communicate, which is hard for me as an elder millennial to see the value in that right away, straight away. Yeah. But from a business standpoint, it's really valuable, and they are genuine connections.
Yeah, they are, and that's something that is always regularly shocking to me too, is how genuine connections you can build with, like, through people that you establish this way. And I think it's because they already, especially if you're kind of the creator, which we are in a lot of these, when people reach out, they already kind of feel like they know me, right? Like, I've gotten on Zoom calls with people, and they're like, oh, I've been like listening to your stuff for like a year, like following me on Instagram or the other different things. And so, at least from my perspective, being an introverted person, I don't feel like I need to break down that initial barrier, right? At least one side of it. Yeah, small talk's generally pretty minimal because they are driving the conversation with what they want to talk with me about. Yep. And so that, you know, builds genuine relationships relatively quickly. But no, it is interesting. I think it's something that's super valuable. If you're looking to get in real estate, looking to grow your real estate, there's a reason that you see so many agents and stuff that go through this, because, you know, it builds their sphere amongst, you know, their
sphere of influence,
all the people that they want to potentially, you know, help buy and sell a house. But on an investor end, it's exactly the same thing. I think the biggest thing is that you need to make sure that the stuff that you're doing is at least like genuinely you, and not just go hire some like VA company that goes and just like copies everybody else, right? Or just goes and like, or just like, you just do like the stupid dances. Yeah, we've never done that. We literally just hired and fired. So if you saw like the spam where you're like, yeah, their shit looks different, and now it's back to normal. Yeah, we learned our lesson there. But like, there's nothing worse than like the 45-year-old dude in like a suit that's doing like a dance. I'm like, come on, bro. Just like talk about like interest rates or something. We don't need another real estate agent that raps music instead of deals. There's so many of those out there. It's so the worst. At this point. I know, and they're so cringy. Like, it doesn't have to be cringy. You can make it not that way. You just have to have a little bit more intention around it. But anyway,
so I enjoy. I like some of the folks even in our instant investor group. They've got their social media popping and like just showing what they're doing day to day and putting their own spin on it. I think is just that's cool. Like, you can still be doing the exact same thing somebody else is doing, but putting your own narration to it.
Yeah. And you know, with all the hate that social media gets, there is so much business value to be made. You know, even back before we started doing the podcast and everything else, we made hundreds of thousands of dollars just through social media, you know, by like buying houses from people that were on there that we were the first to respond to, or by selling houses to other people. Yeah. You know, it was such a reoccurring pattern. And the biggest reason that we were able to do that was because we were very, very active on the social media pages for our local market. And so when stuff would come around and we would be the one that would chime in, people would actually care about what we have to say because we weren't the person that like just chimed in that one time.
You know what's fascinating about that? That's like a whole strategy.
Totally.
In of itself, where say you join a group, like a Facebook group, could be for anything. I don't know, moms that make salads on Wednesdays, whatever. Like, whatever the Facebook group is, however niche it is, you could show up and not be a mom and never make a salad, and definitely not make salads on Wednesdays. And like, if you're active in that group, talking about stuff, asking dumb questions, you know, doing this, you become an authority within that group.
You do.
And I've seen that happen. You've seen that happen. Yeah. Where there's people out there that are not necessarily an expert in anything that they're within that space, but they are active and they're engaging, which, by the way, the people that start those groups love, right? Because they start the group because they want to have engagement. Yeah. And they somehow become an authority, even though they're maybe the least authoritative person with their experience. Yeah.
I mean, there's people that do that and they start legitimate business out of it, right? Just from like leveraging the authority they have in that group that somebody else made. Like back when I was super into, like competing in CrossFit and different things, I was involved in like this. It was called like RP Strength, which was like a nutrition program that a lot of people did.
You sent me some stuff from them.
Yeah, and they had a very, very active Facebook group. And there was people that basically got involved in that, you know, for like diet needs, right, and education. And they ended up launching these different like meal prep businesses or like different kinds of like apps and different stuff because people would always express issues, right, in those groups, and they're like, oh, maybe I could fix that. Entrepreneurs, they came in and they were like, hey, so I'm launching this, first for RP strength people, and because they were such a reoccurring name, they all of a sudden would go from zero to having like a 7-figure business over the course of like a couple of months. Incredible. And I can think of 3 separate businesses that started up in that. One of them was a mobility and stretching app. The other 2 were these meal prep plans, right? Well, sorry, that like the original sort of meal prep where you could like send them your diet plan from RP Strength and they would like prep all of the food and stuff and just send it to you. And people made like insane money off that.
That's awesome.
So, but again, they were going out of their way, providing value, establishing that influence. And if you have that influence, you can make big money without having to work nearly as hard as an entrepreneur who doesn't have that.
Totally. So that's why OnlyFans is an incredible platform for real estate investors. Well,
but seriously, so that is why some random lady can go on OnlyFans and make no money, but you have a chick that was on, what's a sitcom, That 70s Show for 1 season, right, in the 90s, and she goes and starts an OnlyFans, and all of a sudden she's making $1 million a month.
Did this happen, or are you making that up?
No, this has happened over and over and over again.
Oh,
with,
I thought you were talking specifically about one of those That 70s Show girls. No, there would have been.
There was one from one of those other shows, though, that went and did that, and she's now like one of the top people.
Right.
But even though she's like 20 years older now than when she did that. Yeah.
It's like Stephanie from Full House or some random shit that people like, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so.
Wow.
But
anyhow, good stuff there. I think that's valuable for people listening on a small scale. Just not the OnlyFans thing, but the social media influence at a small scale, even within your own market. And I bring that up because I get a lot of questions from people asking, like, okay, so how do I figure out? I want to do wholesaling. I want to be in a virtual market or even my own market. Like, how do I establish the quote boots on the ground? And well, a lot of it is just connecting with people, and you're going to likely use social media for that these days.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where else you're going to do it, especially if you can't be there locally. You can go to the RIA, and that's going to be an in-person connection, but you're still going to connect with people through social media. That is such, in this industry right now, this day and age, that is such a common way to work and communicate with people.
It is. Yeah. I mean, and with more and more younger people coming up too, it's going to just become more common. And that's a great example too. If you're going to start a new market, you boots on the ground. If your social media is like a picture of you from 2015 and nothing else,
blurry.
Yeah, and it's all blurry. Yeah, it was taken with a Polaroid camera, and then you scanned it and put it out. Whatever the hell.
It's always like that too. You have like spiky hair with frosted tips. Like what's what kind of shell?
Puka shell necklace.
Puka shell necklace.
Yeah.
Popped up polo shirt.
Well, yeah.
You're like 43 now.
I mean, but yeah, it's like, okay, we get it. You used to sell Toyotas. You don't do that anymore. But but for real, like that, you have that, or you have something that like you were showing that you were actively involved in real estate, right? And you were doing these deals, or at least like trying to do deals, and you go and you look for boots on the ground. You're gonna have a lot more people that are willing to work with you, just even if you have the most amateur level social media.
Totally.
So I think it's just a great thing for people to keep in mind as they are going through any sort of journey with their business or real estate, of whether you're just at the beginning, you are looking to do it along the way, you're trying to grow your business, right, and making sure that you're doing social media on a regular clip along the way. Definitely don't be making up a bunch of bullshit if it's not true, right? Because that's the easiest way to completely destroy a reputation, is if you do that, going and posting that you're doing 17 deals a month when in reality you're doing 4.
I don't think
I don't think anyone would ever do that. Definitely not locally here in Spokane. But like going through and just making that a regular habit, it doesn't need to be complicated, but it will absolutely elevate your game over the short and the long term. So either way, there's your quick tip for the day. So cool. So I guess if people did want to do that, what do you think is the easiest way for someone to start? Let's give them an actionable tip.
To start a social media empire from the ground up.
It doesn't need to be an empire. Just making it something that they add into their repertoire.
Something that I've had to learn is to think about what you do during the day, and how can you explain that to like a kindergartner, and who would find value in that.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that there are people that will find value in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge thing. And I would say that for me, one of the biggest sort of things I had to overcome was you feel like especially because like people kind of like hate on it, that people are gonna like judge you and those sort of things, and you feel dumb. Just know that people either enjoy it or they don't care. Very rarely are people going to be haters. They either don't give a shit or they think it's cool. And there's
if they're haters, you probably don't hang out with them anyways.
Exactly. You don't want to talk to them anyway, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
I would say the only frustrating thing would be is the people that you know that you know as close as like that are close to you that maybe wouldn't support you.
That is something.
Why didn't you share my post, dog?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like that could be frustrating.
Yeah. Or when my mom had to tell me that she was no longer listening to my podcast because I made her uncomfortable.
You dropped some F-bombs there for a bit. I get it.
It slips out sometimes. You get, especially when you're getting excited. I can't help it. So anyway, but cool guys. There's your tip for the day. I think that if you want to grow your business, make sure you're working some personal brand stuff in there because it will pay you exponential dividends. And I think one of the hardest parts is getting the consistency going with it. But I mean, I can tell you,
it's very hard. I can tell you that right now.
It's very hard for sure. But when we are consistent with it, we definitely have more opportunities. From this podcast alone, we have had tons more opportunities that have come around. And this is a relatively small show compared to a lot of people. It's not teeny tiny. We get 5 to 6,000 downloads a month with it. But think about what it would take for us to get in a room of 5 or 6,000 people. That's a pretty big event.
Yeah, and we enjoy all 5 to 6,000 of our people. We don't forget or miss any of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyways, if you want to help us increase that number to 10,000 and beyond, you should share this with your friends. That's the easiest way for us to help grow this thing. Is to think about how you heard about this show and go and share it with someone the same way. Post it on social media. Tell someone about it. I don't know. Do smoke signals for it. Put it behind your plane and fly around. That would actually be sick. We should do that.
We should do it because I do have a goal written down, which would equate to 12,000 a month. So get out there, share it.
Yeah.
Like it. Give us we need some more 5-star reviews.
We do need some more 5-star reviews. Especially because we got our first 1-star review and I don't know why.
Yeah. Was it just a 1-star or they at least leave a comment?
No, there's no comment. It's just someone just went and left a 1-star. I think it's probably because you made that joke about real estate curious and being rainbows and unicorns or whatever you said. That definitely triggered somebody.
Oh. Yeah, that might have triggered it, or one of the other many things that one of us would say that would trigger people.
Yeah, where we make fun of meth heads and other things, which
we make
people
fun of a lot of people. But hey, we can dish it out. And we can also take it.
I bet it was Jamil. I bet it was one of those guys. It was one of the
key guys. A little sneaker. Yeah. Well, did you see that he has the Kung Fu Panda, the Comp Fu Panda now?
No.
So he ripped off Kung Fu Panda. So I figured out what he does. So what he does is he pays for advertisement on some silly advertisement for whatever is just ridiculous. I comp better than people, that's why I'm the best wholesaler in the world. Mm-hmm. Next it'll be I take pictures better than anybody, that's why I'm the best wholesaler of the world, right? Whatever it is, but then he runs ads on that and then tries to sell things for $20 to people as many times as he can, and then all of a sudden that's gone. The Jumanji challenge. I don't even know if he actually does those things.
I don't. He probably doesn't. And you know what? We are validating this whole podcast right now because you want to talk about personal brand with zero credibility. There we go. Boom. We can't stop talking about him because we're fucking obsessed apparently, and it's someone that everyone else seems to know. And if you don't know who we're talking about, good. Don't go look him up.
Yeah. Don't go look him up.
Anyways, guys. All right. We'll finish up there. Thanks for listening, everybody. Seriously, go and share this with your friends. It's the easiest way to help us grow. Is if you just tell other people about it. They say that a referral is worth 6.5 future
5.4.
clients, 5.4. I don't know. Yep. Dyslexic, make sure the numbers. But share there, it helps us out a ton. And besides that, if you did want to follow us on social media, so we talked about that a lot. You can follow me on Instagram at Mike_invests, and you can follow Dan at InvestorManDan. And we appreciate you all listening. Thanks, everybody. Talk to y'all next week.
See y'all.